sunshines. Good morning. Welcome to our next class. Today you're going to learn something interesting, but it's also a bit sad about human history. Here we go. And look, I want you to check first that I already changed the goal, if you can see it right here. Well, apparently we can't see it. I'll switch it again. So the goal, but not just for today, but also for the other class we're going to have together where we get to see each other, is to describe how a diverse society was formed at the beginning of the colonial age. So we'll get there. We already know what's diversity, so don't worry, we'll get there. Now, last class we talked about slavery. And just to remind you a little bit, what we talked about is about the Spanish after they had already enslaved indigenous people, and many were dying and many were tired also already. They decided, maybe we should get other people to work for us. And here's the little thing, the little twist in history. They said, but we don't really want to pay for it, and we don't really want to take care of them, so we can't really bring somebody from Spain because we don't want to do that. So what we want is to have somebody working for free. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring people from another country. And actually we're going to bring them from Africa, where we found these people that are, their skin is dark and they're not like us. And they have no soul. We're going to talk about all that. So they decided, we can go and kidnap them. So they didn't really make war over there. They just went like sneaking, and they kidnapped them. And they kidnapped them, and then they put this chain around their neck, and then they dragged them into a boat. That's what we talked about last class. So right now I'm gonna share the video I told you guys about, but I couldn't play it. So I'm gonna share it with you right now so you can understand now what was going on these boats that they were dragged to. Okay, let's check it.
From about 1525 to 1866, 12.5 million Africans were taken from their homeland and forcibly shipped across the Atlantic, a journey that almost 2 million of them wouldn't survive. By the turn of the 18th century, European merchants were building vessels capable of transporting hundreds of slaves per journey. These ships had extra portholes for ventilation, weapons mounted on deck in case of rebellion, and additional compartments added below deck to take on more human cargo. Before boarding the ships at African port cities, slaves were stripped of their clothing and remaining possessions and had their heads completely shaved. During boarding, which could take weeks or even months, slaves lived on the deck of the ship in a temporary wooden house constructed by the crew. The crew also installed netting around the deck of the ship, designed to catch slaves who might opt for death over forced servitude. Once moved below deck, slaves would find themselves stuffed into compartments with ceilings as low as 4.5 feet, where they would spend most of their voyage. They were segregated by gender and age. Adult men were kept separately and shackled in pairs. Women usually left unbound in their designated compartment, and children often free to move about the ship. There was no plumbing of any kind. Slaves were forced to relieve themselves where they sat, creating hellish conditions when combined with the heat and lack of ventilation below deck. Disease was rampant. Measles, smallpox, influenza, scurvy, and dysentery, the #1 killer, ravaged slaves and crew members alike. The slaves generally spent about 8 hours a day above deck, but were still separated by gender with a barricado, a reinforced wall that could be used to protect crew members in case of a revolt. Slaves were also subject to forced exercise, sometimes including dance and song for the entertainment of the crew. Disobedient slaves were tortured and beaten, usually whipped with the especially cruel cat-o'-nine tails, a tool designed to inflict maximum pain. Slaves who refused to eat their typical meal of rice and beans were forced to do so, sometimes with a speculum oris, a medieval tool used to pry open unwilling mouths. Women, while usually left unshackled, were raped and sexually abused by members of the crew, sometimes arriving in the New World carrying the children of their attackers. But it was the women, using their minuscule freedoms, who would often coordinate mutinies against their captors. But these rebellions were rarely successful.
After seeing that video, I bet you're thinking the same that I was of what? That just can't be right. That's not okay. And it will never be. And that's why it's so important to learn history. That's why we learn all this, because sometimes humankind has done things that are just not okay, that we shouldn't have. And when we learn history, then at least we think twice before we do the same thing. We think, we have done that already, and that was not okay. And that's when we stop and we say, maybe we shouldn't do it again. That's why it's important for you guys to learn this. So slavery is a very sad part of human history, and even though here in Ecuador we didn't have it so complicated as in some other countries. So after you've seen the video also, what I want you to do in your notebook is to make sure that you describe all that you've seen. So you are going to copy the date, the team, and then you're going to describe the conditions in which the slaves were brought from Africa to America. Let me just move around so you can see the whole word. So you can pause the video right there. There you go. You can copy all that, okay? So you have to describe this. That means that you have to describe from the beginning, okay? Meaning that you need to tell Miss Eddie how did they get them, what happened, how did that happen. Then once they were on the boat, what sort of things happened there on the boat. And then in the end, you also should describe to me what we talked about last class. How were they sold? Remember we talked about it. How much were they worth? Or maybe were the kids important? Were the kids expensive somehow or not? True. So you can write a little bit of what you know about that. We're going to discuss it on next class. So if you don't remember this part or you're not completely sure of it, it's okay. Don't worry. Okay. If you remember, I'm not going to tell you the answer to this, but if you remember, I want you to tell me something that happened with some ships that were bringing slaves and that they were already around Ecuador and something happened there. I'll see next class who can tell me the answer to that, because I'm not going to repeat it right now. We'll see. Okay, so sweetie pies, you have a pre-work. Yay, pre-work. Are you not happy about a pre-work? You have a pre-work. It's pretty simple. Okay, you need to fill your vocabulary journal. Now, if you don't have any more pages, it's okay. Do it in your notebook, okay? You can do it in a piece of paper. It's okay, as long as you have what's very important, that it's the word, the definition of that word, the sentence with that word, and a drawing, okay? You need to have this. Your word is right there, so you need to write it down, and you need to send Miss Eddie on Dojo class a picture of this, of your vocabulary journal, either in your notebook and a piece of paper. That's okay. Okay, that's what you need to send me. So, sweetie pies, I love you so much, so much. I can't wait to see you. What we're gonna discuss next class is very interesting, because we're gonna talk about this word that you're gonna look up and what we have learned so far. Okay, so love you so much. Thank you for all that energy. Thank you for your hard work. We're almost there. We're almost there, okay? So don't give up. Come on, ñeque, guys. Love you so much. Bye-bye.